good evening sa lahat. Yung topic natin for today ay about homosexuality. So ito yung second topic natin for our series entitled Christianity and Politics. So this is meant to provide basic foundations for Christians sa mga issues na may kinalaman sa Christianity sa politika. To start, what we will do muna is to show ang context natin as Filipinos regarding SOGIE Bill and Civil Union or same-sex marriage. And syempre, kasama na dito yung pag-address ng arguments sa pag-refute na may kinalaman on both. Tapos lastly, we will give biblical teaching about homosexuality and marriage. So yung intention here is to equip everyone on how to answer yung common objections sa public square and for us to have biblical convictions then regarding the issue. So to start, let's first discuss yung context natin as Filipinos sa homosexuality. Ayon sa isang survey entitled The Global Divide on Homosexuality ng Pew Research Center ng US, ay sabi na 73% ng adult na Filipinos say na dapat daw natanggap ng mga Pinoy ang LGBTs. Kasama raw tayo sa pinaka-gay friendly na mga bansa, which is pang 10 tayo sa 17 na countries. Last year, nung June 2019, nag-report yung Rappler na may 70,000 na Filipinos ang nag-join sa Metro Manila Pride March. Sa website ng Metro Manila Pride ay makikita natin sa Human Rights Research and Education sa section ng Policy Advocacy na sila ay nag-lobby for the Anti-Discrimination Bill or the SOGIE Equality Bill. Ito ay supported ng Miss Universe 2018 na si Catriona Gray. And syempre dahil dito maraming upset sa kanya kasi they think na nag-compromise siya as someone who professes to be a Christian. Ang response niya sa kanila, quote, "My belief as a Christian does not limit me from fighting for the rights of others," end quote. And ang sabi pa niya, i-add ko lang din, quote, "Religion is never an excuse to hate, put down, or act indifferent to the suffering of others. I believe God is love, and I will treat everyone, no matter who they are, to the best of my ability with love," end quote. Ang mga tao ay nag-argue rin ang pag-support daw sa SOGIE and same-sex marriage ay support sa civil rights ng LGBT community. For the sake of discussion, related on ayon sa Find Law ay ang civil rights ay set of rights na designed to protect an individual from unfair treatment. Ito raw ay rights ng individuals to receive equal treatment. So this makes sure na protected ang person based on them belonging to a particular characteristic such as race, gender, and disability as an example. Ang term na ito historically would make us think of the civil rights movement ng 1950s and 1960s. During this time ay officially na na-abolish ang slavery sa US. However, ang discrimination against blacks ay hindi tumigil. What this movement did ay sa 14th Amendment ay binigyan ng equal protection ng blacks under the law. Sa 15th Amendment naman ay they were given the right to vote. May Jim Crow laws din kung saan ay bawal gumamit ng same public facilities ang blacks with whites. Bawal din manirahan sa same na lugar ang blacks and whites. Bawal sila mag-aral sa same na school. And bawal sila ikasal with a person from a different race. To make the story short, ay this movement made sure na may equality between blacks and whites sa America. This is why when some people equate the anti-discrimination bill as supporting the civil rights of the LGBT community, they are basically invoking na dapat equal ang LGBT with other people sa population in the Philippines. This is the same sentiment na makikita natin sa Declaration of Independence na sinasabi, quote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness," end quote. So ngayon, syempre this begs the question, ang SOGIE bill ba at civil union ang answer para masabi na equal na ang rights ng lahat? To answer this, ang gagawin ko muna is to answer yung common arguments for SOGIE bill and civil union. So ngayon natapos na natin yung discussion and context, magpo-proceed na tayo sa common objections. So first, we will answer muna ang SOGIE bill. Ang common argument nila is to fight for SOGIE is to fight for equal rights of all. Yung huling bill na nakita ko on this so far, yung tinatawag na SOGIE Equality Act. So ito ay final ni Sara Elago at ito ay ang HB 6294 noong February 17, 2020 para sa first regular session ng 18th Congress. So sa penalties nito, we can see na ang fine is not less than 100,000 pesos but not less than 500,000, or imprisonment not less than 1 year but not more than 6 years, or both. So pwede ka magkaroon ng penalty na pera and makulong din. So pag ang isang offense ay motivated ng bias against SOGIE, ay makukuha na agad ang maximum na penalties. So ngayon, syempre, if yan ang penalty sa pag-violate ng bill, let's check some examples ng violations na considered ng bill. And of course, I encourage everyone to read in the bill for yourself, and publicly available naman ito if you will search. Kasi hindi kaya ng time natin ma-discuss lahat today. Sa letter L ng Section 4, sabi, quote, engaging in public speech meant to shame, insult, vilify, or which tends to incite or normalize the commission of discriminatory practices against the LGBT, and which acts or practices in turn intimidate them or result in the loss of their self-esteem. End quote. So ito, pareho siya sa 2017 version nila na walang religious exemption. And ang problem nito ay it violates the Constitution. Ang sabi sa Article 3, Section 4 ng Bill of Rights, quote, no law shall be passed abridging the freedom of speech, of expression, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and petition the government for redress of grievances, end quote. Dito ay we can see ang violation kasi ang sabi, sa what is considered na violation ay ang public speech na meant na mag-intimidate or lessen ang self-esteem ng isang LGBT. So this is subjective na if you talk to them about it being a sin, it may intimidate them or lessen their self-esteem. And sabi ay public speech na meant to shame, insult, or vilify. Pero paano ba malalaman objectively ang intent ng isang tao? Mahirap din ito malaman. Ang subjectivity ng section na ito may force people na ma-curtail ang kanilang freedom of speech. Sa Article 3, Section 5 ng Bill of Rights naman ay sabi, quote, no law shall be made respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. The free exercise and enjoyment of religious profession and worship without discrimination or preference shall forever be allowed. No religious test shall be required for the exercise of civil or political rights. End quote. And syempre, sa Section 5, we can see na hindi lang freedom of speech ang affected, but prohibited din ang free exercise ng ating religion kasi we will not be able to freely share ang beliefs natin dahil sa fear na maaari tayo maparusahan dahil sa bill. Sa letter O ng Section 4 naman ay sabi, quote, O, preventing a child under parental authority, custody, or guardianship from exhibiting or expressing one's sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, or manifesting rejection of such child's sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression by inflicting or threatening to inflict bodily or physical harm against the child or by causing mental or emotional suffering of the child through intimidation, harassment, public ridicule or humiliation, repeated verbal abuse, or other similar means, or in general, commit any act or omission prejudicial to the welfare and interest of the child as a result of the bias against the sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression of the child. End quote. So yung implication naman ito, if you will discipline ang anak mo dahil sa kanilang SOGIE, ay you will be penalized for it. So of course, we understand na LGBTs should not be abused in the family. Actually, hindi lang LGBTs, but every child. Nevertheless, ay ang parents ay may right and authority sa pagpalaki ng kanilang mga anak. And hindi matatanggal ang right nito ng mga magulang unless may compelling na state interest ang ating gobyerno rito. For me, ay hindi na kailangan ito dahil address naman ang problem ng abuse sa ating current laws. Sa letter M ng Section 4 naman ay sabi, M, subjecting persons or groups of persons to harassment generally defined as such unwanted conduct, pattern of conduct, act, or series of acts which tend to annoy, insult, bully, demean, offend, threaten, intimidate, alarm, or create a hostile or emotionally distressing environment, or put them in fear of their safety, and which behavior is motivated in whole or in part by the offender's bias, belief, or perception regarding the offender party's SOGI, regardless of whether the belief or perception is correct. Such prohibited act may include physical assault, stalking, or making derogatory comments, slurs, or lewd propositions, and may be conducted through any form of medium, including but not limited to visual representation, broadcast communication, correspondence, or communication through mail, or any telecommunication device, or through the internet or cyberspace, end quote. So ito, I see this as abridgment ng freedom of speech, expression, and of the press. So super laki ng sakop nito na kahit yung mga ginagawa natin sa cyberspace ay babantayan. We violate this part when ang LGBT na person or group will experience harassment. And they define this subjectively, like unwanted conduct or acts na nag-annoy, insult, bully, demean, offend, intimidate, or may cause an emotionally distressing environment sa kanila, regardless whether tama or mali ang belief. So basta na-feel nila yon and motivated by yung bias ng offender against a SOGI ng offended, whether by whole or in part, which is of course hard to prove. And syempre, affected din ang free exercise ng religion natin in whatever medium, which includes cyberspace. So this makes the bill more dangerous than the old ones dahil kasama na yung internet as a medium. For this reason, of course, I would say yung SOGI bill ay hindi for equal rights but for privilege rights dahil sa magiging effect nito sa ibang mga tao who disagree with them sa general population. I would affirm na ang rights ng LGBTs currently ay covered na ng Constitution, Revised Penal Code, and Civil Code. So I see na hindi na need ang bill na ito. So ngayon, we just finished talking about yung SOGI bill. So next, we will talk about civil union or same-sex marriage. So yung common argument dito ay people are excluded from entering into legally recognized and protected unions because of their SOGI. So yung Civil Partnership Act or HB 6595 ay filed noong October 10, 2017. Yung kanilang explanatory note for this bill ay ang Section 1, Article 3 ng 1987 Constitution. Ang sabi rito ay, quote, "No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall any person be denied the equal protection of the laws." End quote. So yung problem nito is that they mischaracterize ng LGBT community ay hindi included sa pag-enter into a legally recognized and protected unions. They fail to see kasi na restricting ang marriage to only one man and one woman as stated sa Family Code of the Philippines. And hence, it does not violate anyone's fundamental rights. Yung marriage kasi, isa siyang inviolable na social institution at ito ay hindi pinagbabawalan ang isang homosexual na ipakasal. Kailangan lang nila ikasal in the same way na other people are marrying, which is to marry someone of the opposite sex. Ang right na ito ay extended equally sa lahat ng unmarried adults sa Philippines. So yung problem ng LGBT community kasi is they want to marry a person of the same sex, which is claiming a new right na hindi available sa iba sa society. This new right ay denied sa lahat sa bansa natin, which is not discriminating against them kasi kahit heterosexuals naman ay bawal mag-marry from the same sex. This is analogous sa claim ng isang tao na gusto pakasalan ng kanyang sister. At sinasabi na ang batas ay basically denying him a basic na human right to marry. Pero invalid ang argument kasi wala naman sa society natin ang may legal right na pakasalan ng kanilang sister. So if lahat naman sa society ay bawal pakasalan ng kanilang sister, then hindi sila deny ng bansa ng bagay na hindi dinideny para sa lahat. This means na hindi valid ang pag-cite nila sa Constitution to justify their case. And this means na hindi pwede ito i-allow kasi to allow it by this logic should allow other types of marriages na hindi okay dahil basic human right naman pala. To add sa argument ko, mag-cite rin ako from law expert na si Dr. Jemay Gatdula. Sabi niya, quote, "Those who are not doctors, not Filipinos, not qualified to drive are not bad people. They simply did not match a certain definition or requirement made by the government for a purpose. There is no discrimination here as the circumstances are different." The benefits associated with marriage are designed specifically for that one man, one woman, and comprehensive union ordered to procreation and family life. It's not that those who do not meet the definition of marriage are lesser or bad people, just that the benefits discussed as a whole were not designed for their particular situation. If certain benefits are the objective, then the remedy is to amend laws relating to that particular benefit rather than try reconstruct marriage, which government is not capable, and re-engineer Philippine society. End quote. Aside from this, same na benefits ng civil union and marriage will give men and women less incentive to marry. This will make people go sa ibang arrangement na less beneficial sa society compared sa traditional marriage, which is ang best na environment for having babies. In light of this, let me share kung bakit best ang traditional marriage na institution or relationship for having children. First, ay ang benefit ng pagbibigay ng magandang environment for having babies. May interest ang state sa mga baby dahil hindi makakasurvive ang society natin without them. Ang environment from homosexual na couple na naglack ng either a father or a mother. Ang mga tao na nakikipagtalik sa mga di nila kilala ay hindi makakabigay ng security na pareho sa committed relationship ng parehong nanay at tatay na committed na alagaan ng kanilang baby. Protected din ang nanay dahil sa ganitong institution ay masisiguro na ang nanay ay hindi iiwanan ng mag-isa para alagaan ng baby. Ang tatay ay expected din ng society at ng batas na maging responsable bilang tatay sa kanilang pamilya. This is why we should grant benefits din sa marriage relationship na ito para mas ma-encourage ang mga tao to be married, which is an institution that gives the best environment for the care of the babies. Second, ay based on research ay ang kasal ng heterosexual couples ay napapalaki ang kanilang mga anak ng mas maayos compared sa ibang institution or relationship. Mas mataas ang kanilang nagiging antas ng edukasyon. Mas mataas ang kanilang pamantayan ng buhay at mas less likely sila na maging mahirap. Mas mataas din ang physical and emotional health nila. Mas mababa rin ang chance na gagawa sila ng krimen and mas mababa ang chance na sila ay aabuso ng alcohol or droga, tas mas mataas ang chance na mabuhay sila batay sa tamang moralidad. Mas mababa rin ang chance na sila ay makaranas ng physical na pang-aabuso at mas mataas ang chance na nakatira sila sa bahay na nagbibigay ng protection at support sa kanila. Mas mataas din yung chance ng mga bata mula sa married na heterosexual parents ay makatatag ng stable na family. Third, ay mas nasisiguro ng traditional na marriage ang pangmatagalan na companionship at pag-alaga na mas maganda kumpara sa ibang human relationship. Nagresulta rin ito sa mas mataas na pamantayan ng buhay at mas mababa na chance na maging mahirap ang kalalakihan at kababaihan. Fourth, ay mas nabibigyan ito ng protection yung mga kababaihan laban sa pang-aabuso at pag-abandona at mas na-encourage nito ang mga kalalakihan na magkaroon ng socially beneficial na pursuits kumpara sa ibang mga uri ng relasyon. Fifth, ay mas na-encourage ang homosexual na marriage ang mga lalaki at babae na magkaroon ng intimate and faithful na relationship kumpara sa ibang mga institution at uri ng relationship. Mas mataas na protection din ito laban sa sexually transmitted na mga disease kumpara sa ibang mga relationship at institution. Lastly, yung sa civil union violates Article 2, Section 12 of the state policies ng Constitution. It says, quote, the state recognizes the sanctity of family life and shall protect and strengthen the family as a basic autonomous social institution. It shall equally protect the life of the mother and the life of the unborn from conception, the natural and primary right and duty of parents in the rearing of the youth for civic efficiency and the development of moral character shall receive the support of the government, end quote. Yung family na described here is father, mother, and children. So ngayon, we just finished answering yung common arguments for SOGIE bill and civil union. Ngayon naman, we will talk about yung biblical teaching related sa homosexuality and marriage. So mag-start tayo sa homosexuality. So Romans 1:18-32 ay sabi, quote, the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness, since what may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. For although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him. But their thinking became futile, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Although they claimed to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images made to look like a mortal human being, and birds and animals and reptiles. Therefore, God gave them over in the sinful desires of their hearts to sexual impurity for the degrading of their bodies with one another. They exchanged the truth about God for a lie and worshipped and served created things rather than the Creator who is forever praised. Amen. Because of this, God gave them over to shameful lusts. Even their women exchanged natural sexual relations for unnatural ones. In the same way, the men also abandoned natural relations with women and were inflamed with lust for one another. Men committed shameful acts with other men and received in themselves the due penalty for their error. Furthermore, just as they did not think it worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God, so God gave them over to a depraved mind, so that they do what ought not to be done. They have become filled with every kind of wickedness, evil, greed, and depravity. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, and malice. They are gossips, slanderers, God haters, insolent, arrogant, and boastful. They invent ways of doing evil. They disobey their parents. They have no understanding, no fidelity, no love, no mercy. Although they know God's righteous decree that those who do such things deserve death, they not only continue to do these very things, but also approve those who practice them. End quote. So yung passage dito about the depravity ng world, we see na when God gave over ang mga tao sa kanilang sins as judgment, it mentioned na men and women abandoned natural relations with the opposite sex and were inflamed with lust for the same sex. Kasama siya na mentioned as sin with other sins na ginagawa ng sinful people in general, which are, yung sinabi doon, quote, they have become filled with every kind of wickedness, evil, greed, and depravity. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, and malice. They are gossips and slanderers, God haters, insolent, arrogant, and boastful. They invent ways of doing evil. They disobey their parents. They have no understanding, no fidelity, no love, no mercy. End quote. So they are so sinful that they celebrate people who do the same practice of sin. And so sa 1 Corinthians 6, 9 to 11 naman ay sabi, quote, or do you not know that wrongdoers will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived. Neither the sexually immoral, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor men who have sex with men, nor thieves, nor the greedy, nor drunkards, nor slanderers, nor swindlers will inherit the kingdom of God. That is what some of you were. But you were washed, you were sanctified, you were justified in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ and by the Spirit of our God. End quote. This passage, ang sinasabi ng men who have sex with men ay ang Greek words na malakoi and arsenokoitai. So this refers to both men na pinepenetrate and yung men na nagpe-penetrate. And this refers sa homosexuality in general. It is said na sin ito kung saan hindi maka-enter ang tao sa heaven. Though there is hope kasi sabi ni Paul na ito raw ang past life ng some people sa Corinth. Pero ngayon ay saved na sila at binago sila ni God. Just means na considered niya sin ng homosexuality and ang power ng gospel can change them for the glory of God. So ngayon, we just finished talking about yung some passages na nag-refer sa homosexuality in the Bible. Ngayon naman, we will talk about sa biblical teaching about marriage. So first, let's define muna yung marriage. So yung marriage, defined siya as a legal union of a man and a woman as husband and wife sa lahat ng cultures, societies, and human history. Walang society sa lahat ng recorded history ang nag-permit ng same-sex marriage before the 21st century. Sa Bible ay ang marriage ay nakikita bilang isang lifelong relationship between a man and a woman that is established ng isang solemn na covenant before God. Si Prophet Malachi ay nag-speak of marriage as a covenant kung saan si God mismo ang witness. Ang sabi niya sa Malachi 2:14, quote, "But you say, why does he not accept your offerings? Because the Lord was witness between you and the wife of your youth, to whom you have been faithless, though she is your companion and your wife by covenant." End quote. So, sa passage na to, ang covenant ay isang solemn na agreement na nag-establish ng marriage relationship between a man and a woman. Sa agreement na ito ay ang man and woman ay nag-promise sa bawat isa na magiging faithful sila sa marriage for a lifetime. At si God ay called nila as a witness to their promise para i-hold sila accountable for being faithful to it. Ang ceremonies ng traditional na marriages ay kasama lagi ang public nature ng marriage, kung saan ay may legal na registration ng marriage sa isang publicly accessible na record para malaman ng tao na sila ay husband and wife at ang presence ni God mismo yung witness sa wedding vows. Second, yung marriage ay i-change ang status ng tao before God and society. So ito ay nangyayari hindi lamang dahil ang husband and wife ay nagkakaroon ng solemn na vows na magiging mutually faithful sila for each other sa presence ni God, na si God ang mag-hold accountable sa kanila, but that si God din mismo ay nag-act sa wedding ceremony. Sa context ng nature ng marriage, ang sabi ni Jesus sa Matthew 19:6, quote, "What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate." End quote. This means na when marriage occurs, it is not merely a human ceremony, pero may something na deeply spiritual na nangyayari. Si God mismo ang nag-join sa couple in a spiritual union as husband and wife. Ang union nila is something na God has joined together. To add, we can say na ang tao ay nagbago ang status before society. Clear ang Bible na from the start ay intended niya ng bawat marriage ay maging simula ng isang bagong societal unit, which is a new family na distinct sa families ng parents ng parehong bride at groom. We can see this sa Genesis 2, quote, "Therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." End quote. Ang phrase na "a man shall leave his father and his mother" ay nagpicture ng isang lalaki na iiwan ng kanyang household kung saan ay parte siya, and it implies a new household ang natatatag. Ang phrase na "hold fast to his wife" ay nag-indicate ng new relationship between a man and his wife, ang basis ng new household na natatag. Ang society ay recognize na ang marriage ay binabago ang rules ng men and women sa society. We see na hindi lamang ito nangyari sa movies, pero in real life, nang isang kasal ay called off sa last minute kahit nakarating na ay yung mga guests dahil ang bride or groom ay nag-decide na hindi magpakita. Ang wedding ay considered na hindi nag-take place and considered ang dalawa as single. This indicates ang common belief sa society na lahat ng nangyari before the public ceremony does not constitute a marriage. Pero after ng wedding ceremony, we see na lahat ng tao will think na ang couple ay husband and wife. Hindi na sila single and hindi na sila eligible to date other people. And we can see ng legal status din nila ay nagbago. And if may mamamatay na spouse, ang remaining spouse ay may inheritance rights kung saan ay wala ang ibang tao. And if ang isang spouse ay magkasakit, ay ang isang spouse ay may authority and responsibility na lagaan ng may sakit. And if magkakanak sila, ay sila pareho ay may responsibility na magpalaki ng kanilang mga anak. Third, kailangan ang public awareness sa isang marriage. Dahil ang marriage ay binabago ang view ng society sa isang man and woman, ang weddings na makikita sa Bible ay laging may public na celebration. When Jacob is about to marry Rachel, ay si Laban ay ginather lahat ng tao and made a feast. Doon sa context ay he tricked Jacob. When Isaac married Rebecca, ay we can read na dinala siya sa tent ng nanay niya where she became his wife. Ang context nito shows naman na nangyari ito sa social community where they lived. So ang marriage ay publicly known. Sa New Testament naman ay sa wedding at Cana ay isa siyang malaking public event. Sa modern societies ay ang need for public awareness ng isang marriage ay reflected sa requirement ng couple ay dapat may marriage license na issued ng local government authority. At ito ay validated ng isang tao na recognize na may authority na mag-perform ng weddings tulad ng judge, a justice of the peace, or a member ng clergy. Kahit yung kapitan ng isang ship sa sea can even officiate such a ceremony. Ang mga customs na ito show na dapat may public awareness para masabi na ang marriage ay nangyari. Para masabi ng society na ang man and woman talaga ay isang married couple and will relate to them as a married couple, both for legal and social purposes. Fourth, ang mere sexual intercourse ay hindi nag-constitute ng marriage. Sa Old Testament, if ang isang unmarried couple ay nagkaroon ng sexual intercourse, ang Mosaic law requires them to get married. Pero if ang tatay ng woman ay nag-refuse to give permission, then hindi sila ikakasal. Pero required na magbayad ng fine ang lalaki. Ang sabi sa Exodus 22:16 to 17, quote, "If a man seduces a virgin who is not betrothed and lies with her, he shall give the bride price for her and make her his wife. If her father utterly refuses to give her to him, he shall pay money equal to the bride price for virgins." End quote. Sa New Testament naman, ay nung nakausap ni Jesus ang Samaritan woman, ang sabi niya sa John 4:18, quote, "You have had 5 husbands, and the one you now have is not your husband." End quote. Ang babae here was living in with a woman. Sorry. Ang babae here is living in with a man, pero hindi sila married dahil walang marriage ceremony na nag-take place. Dahil dito, sinabi ni Jesus na hindi niya husband ang man. So this shows na sexual intercourse does not constitute a marriage. Fifth, ang sexual union ay essential na component ng marriage. Si Jesus mismo connected the physical union ng husband and wife sa marriage sa pagiging joined together nila in marriage by God. Ginamit niya ang connection na ito when he was challenging the Pharisees for divorce. Ang sabi niya sa Matthew 19:3-6 ay, quote, "And Pharisees came up to him and tested him by asking, 'Is it lawful to divorce one's wife for any cause?' He answered, 'Have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate." End quote. Sa expression na "so they are no longer two but one flesh," ang word na "so" represents ang Greek word na host, which means "for this reason, therefore, so." Dahil sa sexual union nila ay hindi na sila two but one flesh. Ang unity na ito ay essential na part ng marriage from the beginning ng human race. Kapag ang husband and wife ay nag-come together sa one flesh, unity na ito, sila ay couple na joined together ni God. Ang sexual union ng husband and wife ay essential sa marriage bond nila. On the same theme, ay sinasabi ni Paul sa husband and wives na dapat may regular pattern sila ng sexual intimacy sa marriage. And this reflects an understanding ng sexual union sa marriage bond na kita natin sa Genesis 2. Ito ang reason kung bakit sinasabi na hindi consummated ang isang marriage if hindi sila nagkaroon ng sexual intercourse following the ceremony. Sa ibang traditions and societies ay nagiging grounds pa ito for nullification ng marriage. Nevertheless, we can say na may unusual na cases kung saan may marriage pero unable ang couples to have sexual intercourse dahil sa old age or physical na disability. Sa cases na ganun ay meron pa ring deep na spiritual and emotional unity and a public promise before God and society. So wala namang reason to see the marriage as invalid. 6. Ang marriage ay picture ng relationship between Christ and the church. Pag si Paul ay nag-discuss sa marriage, sa relationship ng husband and wife, ay hindi siya nag-look back sa Old Testament to talk about marriage after sin came sa world. Rather, we see na he looks back prior sa fall and he uses the creation pattern to talk about marriage. Ang sabi niya sa Ephesians 5:31-32, "Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh." This mystery is profound, and I'm saying that it refers to Christ and the church. Sa writings ni Paul, ang mystery dito ay something na hindi masyado naiintindihan ng Old Testament. Pero mas clear na siya sa New Testament times. Ang mystery of marriage na tinutukoy dito na mystery ni Adam and Eve ay ang marriage na nag-refer kay Christ and sa church. Although hindi ito naintindihan nila Adam and Eve, ang relationship nila represents this relationship as all marriages are supposed to do. For this reason ay dapat lahat ng husbands should represent Christ and ang wives should represent the church. 7. Ang definition ni God ng marriage ay hindi lamang for the Jewish people, pero sa lahat ng tao in all societies for all time. Do ang ilang mga laws sa Old Testament ay intended lamang for the Jewish people for a particular time, ang foundational teaching ng marriage ay nanggaling pa sa simula ng human race, sa time kung kailan ginawa si Adam and Eve. It was there bago pa nagkaroon ng sin sa mundo. And this is why Jesus says ng truth na ito about marriage ay from the beginning. This means na part siya ng essence ng creation ni God for us as male and female. This means na intended ni God ng understanding ng marriage bilang isang lifelong union between one man and one woman ay ang correct definition ng marriage for all people on the earth. Para sa lahat ng cultures and societies and for all periods of history hanggang sa magkaroon ng new heaven and new earth. This is the reason bakit judge ang Sodom and Gomorrah sa widespread na homosexual conduct nila, or ang kay Pharaoh for trying to take Abraham's wife, or bakit rebuke ni John the Baptist si Herod Antipas kahit hindi siya part ng Israel dahil nag-commit siya ng incest by taking his brother's wife. Sa Book of Revelation ay ang great city of Babylon ay center ng rebellion against God and judge ito for many sins which include sexual immorality. This shows na from Genesis to Revelation ay si God ay nag-establish ng moral standards sa nature and conduct ng marriage. This shows na God repeatedly hold all people accountable sa mundo and if they will choose to disobey those standards. Eighth, ang marriage between a man and a woman ay ang most fundamental na institution in any society. After ng creation ng man and woman ay God established marriage bago ang ibang institution sa human society. Nauna ito bago ang pagtatag ng cities, nations, courts of laws, or any human laws. Nauna ito sa national, state, or city government. Nauna pa ito bago ang schools, businesses, churches, and mga non-profit organizations. This shows na foundational ito for human society. Si J.D. Unwin, isang British anthropologist, ay nag-come to a conclusion after he investigated ang assertion ni Sigmund Freud kung saan he calls for sexual liberation sa society. He discovered na may grave consequences if mangyari ito. Si Unwin was able to chronicle ang historical decline ng 86 different cultures and he found out na ang strict marital monogamy ay central sa social energy and growth na walang society ang mag-flourish for more than 3 generations without it. Unwin wrote, quote, "In human records, there is no instance of a society retaining its energy after a complete new generation has inherited a tradition which does not insist on prenuptial and postnuptial continence." End quote. Ito ay ang abstinence from sex outside of marriage. So ngayon, we just finished talking about yung biblical teaching on homosexuality and marriage. So in summary, we discussed yung context ng homosexuality sa Philippines. We refuted some arguments kung bakit okay ang SOGIE bill and civil unions for our country. We also discussed ang biblical teaching for homosexuality and marriage. In conclusion, we see na ang SOGIE bill and civil union ay hindi makakabuti para sa bansa natin. So tapos na tayo sa discussion, so we can now proceed sa Q&A.